with me now from Ohio's 6th Congressional District, Congressman Bill Johnson. Congressman, good to see you, sir.
Hi, Liz. Good to be with you.
Nice to be talking to a fellow Buckeye. I grew up in Ohio as well. Congressman, talk to me about this vote that's supposed to happen on Thursday. Do you have 216 in the House? What's going to happen?
Well, I certainly am optimistic that by that time we will have. As you mentioned in your intro remarks there, this is something that the president is fully behind. Paul Ryan is fully behind. Most of our conference has bought into this plan. It's our opportunity to stand up and honor the promise that we've made to the American people to repeal and replace this onerous health care law called the Affordable Care Act.
Right, and I think a lot of the American people agree they want Obamacare repealed. That's why they voted Donald Trump into office. But when you look at this bill, when I've looked at it myself, I mean, it does seem like Obamacare light. The subsidies are technically repealed, but they're basically just renamed, these tax credits, up to $14,000. The state exchanges are supposed to stay. A $100 billion fund essentially meant to bail out insurance companies. I mean, how will this drive down premiums?
Well, let me address several of those things. You said that, first of all, that the subsidies are renamed as tax credits. Liz, the only way you could look at it as a tax credit and call it a subsidy is that if you think the money belongs to Washington, D.C. in the first place. I don't know when it became a bad thing to let the American people keep more of what they earn, especially to purchase something as critical as health
right, but
insurance.
Many of these tax
when you're
credits,
talking about,
many of the tax credits would apply to people who don't pay taxes.
Yeah. Well, but those are the people that have been disenfranchised on Obamacare. You've got millions of Americans that were driven onto the Medicaid rolls because of the collapse of the individual market. And that's exactly the reason why we're allowing the states to sustain the Medicaid expansion for 2 years until December 31st, 2019, so we can give those individual markets a time to recover, so we have a place for those able-bodied Americans on Medicaid to begin to slide off and go purchase health care that they would choose for themselves. This is all about giving the American people a choice about their own health care.
Right. No, and I understand that. I appreciate that fact. But let me make sure that I'm making myself clear here. When you give up to between $2,000 and $14,000 back to an individual who hasn't paid anything into the system, I mean, that's somebody else's tax money that they're receiving then. That's essentially redistribution of wealth, which is exactly what we saw didn't work, wasn't financially sustainable under Obamacare.
But remember, Obamacare was a job killer, Liz. When we start seeing an economic recovery, especially around the healthcare industry, especially in a district you mentioned like mine, you're a fellow Buckeye, I presume, so you know what Appalachia, Ohio goes through. You know, this is a region of the country that's often in the back of everybody's mind in Columbus, even further at the back of everybody's mind in Washington, D.C. Unemployment is still relatively high in many places, well above the national level. And so as we see the job-killing policies of the Affordable Care Act go away, and employers are once again allowed to hire and make their businesses grow, you're going to have those very people that you're talking about paying taxes so that they can purchase health care and health insurance on their own. Millions of Americans were driven onto Obamacare because their jobs were destroyed, they were forced into part-time jobs, or their employers laid them off altogether, or they couldn't afford what was available out on the exchanges or the private market. So there's a lot of moving pieces to this, and remember, this is just the first of 3 steps in repealing and replacing the Affordable Care Act. This is not the end of the journey.
Right, and I understand what you're saying, and I appreciate it. I don't understand how it will be any more financially sustainable than exactly, I mean, that's very similar rhetoric to what the Obama administration told us about Obamacare, that we needed to give a hand up to these people that needed help. We needed to, help them be covered, help them procure or secure health insurance until they could pay for it themselves. I don't see how that would be different. Congressman, why not just repeal it
Big difference.
Why not just,
no.
Why not just repeal
Liz,
it all
not,
at once and then replace it?
Liz, that is not what Liz, that is not what the Affordable Care Act promised the American people. The Affordable Care Act mandated that the American people buy something that they did not want, and when they couldn't afford to buy something that they did not want, they were forced onto Medicaid rolls in many cases because, as you know, the Affordable Care Act took Medicaid up to 138% of the federal poverty level. So you got millions of Americans whose choices were taken away from them. I can't leave your show and let the American people believe that what we're offering is the same rhetoric as the Affordable Care Act, because that is simply not true. There's a big difference between access to affordable care and having a choice about how you provide your own health care than coverage that is neither accessible or affordable.
Right. No, I agree with you on that point. One of the most egregious parts of Obamacare was the fact that the government was forcing us to buy something that we might not want, or telling us that the health insurance coverage we have wasn't acceptable under their standards. That's a good part of this bill, a part that I agree with. 11.8 million is the number actually that were funneled onto Medicaid under Obamacare. 11.8 million of the 14 million total.
Right.
Not a good number for the Democrats to be bragging about. Congressman, let me just leave you with this question. Why not just do a repeal, an entire repeal of Obamacare, and come up with a replacement after it's been repealed?
Because you've got to give these people a landing zone. You've got to give the people that have been disenfranchised, the people that are on Medicaid, those that are able-bodied and able to go to work, you've got to give them a landing strip, Liz, so that the market has a chance to recover. When you put competition and innovation into the healthcare system, and you start allowing insurance carriers to offer insurance across state lines, create a national market so you can go out and shop for your health care much like you do your homeowner's insurance or your car insurance. That's going to create a market, Liz, that's going to give people choices. And when that happens, look, we're the greatest nation on the planet. We represent over 50% of the global market, of the global economy. And it didn't just get like that overnight. It got that way because the concept of innovation and competition that comes from the American free enterprise system, that's what built the world's greatest economy. It's going to do it again in the healthcare industry. And we've heard from health insurance carriers that are thirsty to get back into the market. They couldn't stay in the market under Obamacare, but they're ready to come back in under the American Health Care Act.
Right, and I agree with you. I think one of the things that's made our nation the greatest nation that the world has ever known is the fact the government gets out of the way and lets people innovate, lets people make decisions about their life. I do worry that government...
Let's get out of the way.
Right. Yes, get out of the way. I completely agree with that. And I certainly hope that this bill doesn't continue to have government be too involved. Congressman, I appreciate you coming on the show, sir. It was great to talk to you.
Thanks. Nice talking to you, Liz. Appreciate it.
All right.